Hi, Jason. Hello.
Hey,
Hey,
hi, Emma. Hey, Thomas. I feel like we should tell people what the hell's going on, why I'm here talking to you. We don't know each other. Um, I bumped into you yesterday at an awards show. Emma, you're across the other side of the world.
I
And
am.
and we were chatting. It was the British Independent Film Awards. There's a lot of independent filmmakers there. And I
Yeah.
said, what are you doing? And you said, well, I made a short. You were not shy about sending me a link. And thank you for that. You can't be if you want to be a filmmaker. I watched it. I thought it was great. And I
Thank
phoned
you.
you to ask you some questions about it. And you said, can I record them? Which I thought was very suspicious. And then you said, it's all right, it's for the award season, and sometimes people like to watch people
Yeah.
being grilled about things. So
Well,
this is
I
me
just,
grilling you and Emma.
it was a cheeky ask, and I'm so glad I made it
No,
because
no, I'm thrilled to do
I'm
it.
so grateful you've watched it, let alone that we're having this
Do you
conversation.
know, I
Thank you.
find that shorts are so often incredibly interesting and creative because you're not under the obligation to tell a three-act story with a beginning, middle, and end. You can just do an
Mhm.
impression. You can take a moment, you take an idea, and you can explore it. And you don't, there's no Aristotelian narrative
Yeah.
rules to get a bit
Yeah.
pretentious. Um, but that said, I know what I got from it. But what were you thinking? How did it? Tell me how it came about to start with.
I think I just had this sort of feeling that I was kind of embarrassed by and at the same time wanted to understand more and investigate. And the feeling was like being at a certain place in my life and wanting to be somewhere else, but I had no idea how to actually get there. So that sort of gap between, where I was and where I wanted to be, but not feeling comfortable admitting that gap. Something around that was interesting and embarrassing and scary. So I thought I'd better sort of head straight towards it
So
with
it's
this
film
film.
as therapy in some way
Basically,
for you.
exactly,
But
exactly.
so I know I'm wondering whether people watching this will already have seen the film. If you haven't already seen the film,
Yeah.
I think you should go and watch the film because it would be it's kind of nuts to watch this conversation. Go back, watch the film, and then come back to us. Um, so to me, it spoke so much about ambition, but it also looked like you're very experienced on a film set. I don't know your background. I just met you yesterday. Well, how do you know how a film set works that well? What have you been?
Well,
What's your background?
I was that sort of very low status assistant on a feature film, and I was basically for about 18 months I was the assistant to the director on a film project. That was the first job I'd ever had in film. So I felt like a sort of anthropologist. It was all so new to me after working in theatre beforehand. The hierarchies, the sort of massive difference in power that the highest status people and the lowest status people had, it just felt like this very, very fertile ground.
Yeah.
So I'm not experienced on film sets, but I was so fascinated by it. It was so new that I just kind of drank it all up.
No, I felt
Suppose
the
like
honesty.
I'm
Sorry, go on.
just like hearing what you're saying and like thinking that the sort of like additionally complicating factor to how sort of power operates in those spaces is then like I guess like there's like sort of faux humble position that seems to cheat the power hierarchy as you know it or something, but is in itself a like operation of control, right? And so like power becomes like a tangible material that can be bestowed upon someone. I feel like that's what Tommy feels foul of in the short is like uh he almost takes the sort of power game too literally.
Yeah.
Sure, but it's hard not to. I mean, my wife never comes to visit me on the set, and I asked her once years ago, so why not? She goes, "You don't see it. It's like the court of Louis XIV. There's this incredibly strict hierarchy. People laugh at your jokes. They fetch you tea and stuff. You got all this status." And I went, "No, no, I see it. I really like it. I don't get it at home, you know."
Why do you think
But
I'm here?
yeah, no, so, do you remember feeling? I absolutely remember my first jobs when I had one line in things and feeling that I was invisible or less than that, to be white for
Yeah.
people's shoes. Do you? Because you had a pretty meteoric rise.
Oh,
Was
no,
there a time when that happened to you?
yeah, 100%. I mean, and what's nice, right, is that you can still change jobs and uh you can like move up and down that sort of scale of sort of power and visibility. Which I think is very healthy. But
It's good to be
even,
humbled. Yeah.
I think the feeling I sometimes get is like if I were quite literally invisible, it would be less awkward. like being sort of so low status and having a physical form is kind of embarrassing. But if I was actually transparent, it would be sort of more comfortable or something. But something that I noticed when I first started doing a TV show about dragons is how different reality would be depending on whether or not I was wearing a blonde wig. I could
Yeah.
like completely play I could almost sort of play the game of status depending on how I arrived on set, which was like super interesting.
But
Um,
also, do you not find I don't know what your life is like, but for me, because I was in the Harry Potter films, when I go somewhere where they expect to meet someone from Harry Potter or a famous person, I can arrive at a premiere and people scream and you sign photographs and take selfies and stuff. I get the tube home and no one notices me at all. And
100%.
I kind of love that aspect of it. I wouldn't want to be one of those people that couldn't walk in public,
Mm.
I think.
Yes.
But
No,
so
me.
how I'm doing
But
this
you
in a
both have an
horrible.
iconic blonde wig to
This
That's
is
right.
what just struck me.
put
I'm
on
so
and
glad
take
you
off.
said
Yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
It makes
I
a
was
big
actually
difference
thinking
that
about this
way.
beforehand. Yeah, it's utterly iconic blonde wig.
So I have
Maybe you
all
two
these
should have a
questions.
podcast.
I know the week, but I have all these questions that are completely non-linear. But let's go
Right.
this one first. How did you get Emma to be in your short film? Most people would cut off a digit to get Emma in a film.
Yes, and to be
Do you
honest,
have someone trapped in a basement, or what was happening?
I didn't have to do those things, but I agree. I would have. They're such an extraordinary actor and artist. Emma was actually involved in this project from the very, very beginning. They're a producer on it as well as being in
Right.
it. And the background is we met at university 13, maybe even 14 years ago. We did a bunch of plays together while we were there. Sort of Emma moved from sort of fine art into a sort of design and then acting space. I moved
Right.
from I don't know what the hell I was, but I moved towards theatre directing, and then afterwards we had a theatre company in London for a while, doing sort of scrappily doing fringe shows in basements with 20 people in the audience, and yeah, so we've worked together for a very very long time in all different configurations and yeah, at all different scales.
So did you hatch the idea together, or was it your idea, Thomas, and Emma
It,
joined in?
I think how we've tended to work recently, and please jump in, Emma, if it seems
Yeah,
different
yeah, yeah.
from your
What
perspective.
if I think you're sort of lying? Yeah, yeah, I
I
will.
think I'm lying. Is I tend to generate a lot of almost like a kind of random logline generator. I have a lot of kind of ideas about, oh, it's this kind of person in this kind of situation, and I don't really know why that might be interesting. But if I have these ideas, I'll say them at the very very earliest point to Emma, and what they're incredible at is identifying which ones have legs and also crucially saying why they're interesting. And
Right.
and I think maybe it's the sort of fine art background and that sort of you have a very conceptual way of thinking about work, I think. So that kind of combination, I think, has I benefited so much from it.
Well, one of the things I loved watching it is that you trusted to rely on Emma's face, that they were going to carry the whole story without dialogue, or with a minimum of dialogue and with a minimum of explanation, really. It was just about, and I thought you did that so beautifully to calibrate where Tommy was and what Tommy was thinking, and that balance, as you said, between being invisible and at the bottom of the pile and thinking, I deserve as much as you do to be sitting at the top of the pile. I thought that was so beautifully done. And where did you get craft from? Because it's remarkably well shot, cut, lit, designed in terms of a series of moving images together. For someone who doesn't work on film with cameras, it doesn't feel like someone's first.
Oh well,
I,
no,
I, I feel like I mean, I think one of like Thomas's skill sets, like throughout various mediums, actually, is like you have like an incredibly visual brain, and I think you're also very good at kind of knowing your own skills gap and
Right.
I guess like being like very active in your upskilling when you start any project and like, in a lovely way, I think this applies to so many things. Every time you start a new piece of work, you kind of begin again in some way. Like the demands will inevitably require a set of skills that may be like beyond one's remit. And so I think I saw something incredibly active in you. I think for both of us, like trying to get almost sort of max output on a
yeah,
relatively limited budget, small sort of reasonably limited resources was important. Not least because I think we both care about form and content being sort of a good
Right.
marriage, and like such a big part of the like language of this story is that of advertising, is the idea of sort of the commercial is like the co-option of kind of ambitious desire. And part of that necessarily is an aesthetic one, and you sort of have to meet that ask, I think. Yeah, but yeah, maybe you want to speak to
No, no,
yeah.
100%. And I all I want to do is just yeah, shout out those HODs who kind of made that happen because I knew it needed to look incredible like a car commercial
I was going
and
to say that's, but that's the,
you know,
that's the kind of Mount Olympus of craft with camera. So
right.
it's all very well making a story, and it doesn't really doesn't matter where and if it gets messy if the content is great. But
Mm,
when you're making a mock commercial, you've
Yeah.
really got to be on top of your game craft
You've
wise. And
really got to do it.
it looked like a commercial. To be honest, when watching it, because I didn't have much of a long conversation, and also it was deafening last night, I thought, oh, he's come from commercials. That's why it's
No,
shot
no.
so beautifully as
No,
well.
oh
uh,
wow.
He knows what
well,
he's doing with the camera. He wants
thank
to work
you.
in drama.
But who has done commercials and car commercials is our DOP Anna McDonald, and
Right.
I lent on her a lot for that sort of technical composition I can do, but I actually know very little about cameras, very little about lenses, about the technical aspects of lighting. All I knew is that I'd seen a lot of her work and I'd met her several times, and she felt like a real kind of kindred spirit with a lot of skill that I just didn't have. So yeah, sometimes often part of being a good director is just knowing when to kind of really
And to
delegate
listen.
and when to
Well,
listen.
it
And
is
yeah,
and it isn't. I mean, yes, that's absolutely right, of course. But I've been in things. I obviously won't name what they are, but I've been in things where someone's gone, well, look, the DP is fantastic. I'm not really very experienced. You do what you want. When you let DPs do their own thing, they do
mm,
Yeah.
beautiful things, but it rarely tells the story, or it certainly
mm,
it's never. It felt like you had a real grip on the story you wanted to tell. And with Emma,
yeah,
Yeah.
I was right inside Tommy's mind, heart, twisted brain. I was thrilled that it turned out that way. For one horrible second, I thought it was going to be a story of Tommy succeeding by having done
yeah,
something. I thought, please don't. Of
no,
course,
no, no,
you would never
yeah,
have done that.
yeah.
The is that a volume screen behind
It
there? What is that
is.
thing?
It is. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You
I
know about
mean,
it. Not many
people
people know
work for
about it.
decades to get access to things like that. How?
I
So,
know.
okay, you talk about limited budget. Just
Yeah.
how many millions was this?
Honest, hand on heart. So I have to shout out as well, Garden Studios in London. It's this
Right.
amazing independent film. They've got sort of normal sound stages, but also one, maybe two now, virtual production stages, volumes. Um, and one of the at the very, very earliest stage of this project, I approached them and I said, look, I think this technology is super interesting. I think there's a really interesting metaphorical potential for volumes. Everyone is trying to use them just to say, look, it looks exactly like being on location. We don't need to go anywhere. And I was sort of like, well, actually, it doesn't look like you're going on location. It looks like a whole new medium. It looks like a kind of hyper real,
Right.
Yeah.
a different kind of plane. And I really wanted to sort of exploit that, just because of the themes of dreams and just sort of wanting to get somewhere immediately, and the way you can just flick on a perfect magic hour sunset for 12 hours just fascinated me. And I basically spoke at them until they
Not to
really
them. You spoke
bought it.
at them. I like that.
Yeah, until they bought into the project. And then they started talking back and they started having ideas, and they were saying, yeah, we did this car commercial a while ago and this thing went wrong, and I would sort of like drink that all up. So it was a real collaboration between us and them. And it was a really young team there that would sort of, if they had a cancellation, they would call me up, and me and Emma and Anna would like get down there as quickly as possible just to, walk around the space and
Right.
practice, take pictures on our phones. So,
But
and yeah, and
but they
they gave
gave
us
it
a
you,
huge
or
discount.
huge discount.
We paid probably 20-30% of what
Right.
a real rate would be, which it still almost bankrupted us, because we didn't have any kind of funding or institutional backing, but it was a once in a lifetime
All
opportunity
right.
to kind of have free reign on a virtual production stage, and all the backgrounds as well we had made for it. They weren't sort of
Wow.
screensavers. I spent many an hour on a Zoom call like this with this amazing 3D artist called Luke Hunter, um, basically playing God and designing this kind of road and sunset and trees and the talk show. Um, uh, yeah, it was a very, very strange feeling doing that.
So, so the film, I'm not the first person to see it. It's had a life at other
Yeah,
festivals, right? It's been doing festivals,
yeah,
and this
yeah,
is the end of the festival. I don't,
yeah.
we're having this chat. You said, "Oh, can we record the conversation?" Because this is also for
Yeah.
awards consideration. I don't think you're allowed to say anything about that, but I am. I think it's great, and I think you should get one because I've never seen anybody go from a standing start to be able to master the craft of telling a story that has a heart with a great performance from Emma, and also the kind of technical stuff that people normally wait decades to learn to get access to. You can already do work on a volume screen. So I hope that you get the rewards you want from this, not only because it's a great piece of work, because I'm presuming you have something else. Let's say this does very well in whatever it's entered into. Have you got any projects written? Have you got any ideas? Do you guys, between you, who are obviously clearly a winning pair, have you got things ready to go into action when someone waves a checkbook at you?
Yeah, we're. I mean, I suppose the next frontier is like long form, and
Yeah,
yeah, that I mean that's sort of what we're eyeing on the horizon, Tom. I mean, and hopefully in quite a similar configuration, Tom, writing and directing, and I am desperate to do more producerial work. I
that's what I
love
was going to ask. Did you enjoy being behind the camera? Did you enjoy that aspect of things?
so much. I mean, it didn't feel wholly new because back when we ran like a theatre company, I felt that I was very much a sort of jack of many trades.
Right.
And uh, I crave creative control. Certainly
Sure.
more than we're often afforded when we do our work as actors. I think in particular, the thing that I sort of care about in a theatre context is being the body, the agent that delivers the work to an audience. I like that direct communication. And obviously,
Right.
if you produce the thing, you get to accompany the work to delivery. And so aside from a sort of slight sort of creative control freakiness on my part, I find it more
So
satisfying.
control freak sounds very negative. I've done a little bit more recently. I
Yeah,
didn't do it when I was anywhere near as young as either of you two. I wish I had because it's nice for two reasons. One is it's nice to sit at the grown-up table for a change.
yeah,
Actors are treated like children because we are in fact childlike. That's what we have to do. We have to stay childlike,
yes,
and you
Mm.
feel like you're maybe not given access to grown-up conversations. And the other thing is it also makes you appreciate how difficult it is for the people who are producing and directing things, and maybe makes
yeah.
us less difficult to work with. I don't know, maybe not. We'll see.
Totally.
Um,
Out of interest, is when you when you do both producerial and actor roles in a project, do you
mm.
find that it do you feel less stressed about your sort of actors' participation when you're holding like bigger
Me as
production?
an actor in it, I think I learned a long time ago that the more I thought about things, the worse I did. And I've learned to look,
Yes.
if you came to a set, you would think that I was taking it not seriously often, unless you knew me. Think I was, but I look like I haven't learnt my lines, or I'm chatting, or I'm laughing. What I'm really doing is staying loose and hoping to be present to whatever happens on the day. I feel like the work's been done elsewhere, and you can't plan or block feelings. They're not pieces of Lego. And so I'm very often look like I'm clowning around, and it's because I
Yeah.
feel like that's my job. Other people get incredibly focused, stand there and stick pins in their hands, or look at pictures of their dead relatives. I do the opposite, and so
Yeah.
yes, the more other things I've got to think about, the more I just jump into the acting of it, and it comes out probably more honest and more
Yeah.
spiky and human than anything I could ever have planned. That's what I
Yeah.
find. You
Yeah.
know.
And I have to say, Emma, as well, in on shooting this, you were very much an on the ground, on set, active producer,
Oh,
who
were you?
saved my ass a number of times, as well as being in almost every shot of the entire film. Um, you somehow man, I mean, maybe it had a similar effect. You were able to then just jump into the acting because your head was so full of, are we going to make the day? Is Thomas going completely off the rails with this thing over there? Is everyone being looked after? Does this actor feel left out? All of those things you were really doing the whole time, and then somehow we called action, and you were able to turn it on. That was kind of a new juggling act for you. Is that fair to
Why
say?
do you normally do the thing of tensing up and thinking about it a lot? What's your
No, no, no. I mean, I asked you because I mean, this was definitely true back in the day when we were working in theatre, and I was like, I don't know, I'd probably like built the set, and like, you're doing like a touring production, so the thing you're like kind of doing the get in, and yeah, you're gonna
mm,
be on stage later, but that's so low down in the priority
And
of
we
or in the sort of
co-directed
list
it.
of priorities that it's like. in an amazing way, I just had none of the sort of actor's anxiety. It'd be like, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
if we get there, then everything's gone like incredibly well, you know. I think maybe like the difference here was like in theatre, obviously the workflow means you can slightly separate out those roles, you
yeah,
know, like you can change hats in a more sort of distinct fashion. Definitely just the first day of shooting this, I found it slightly hard to work out who to be and when, and
yeah,
which
yeah.
jobs to sort of delegate in order to create space to think for 10 minutes about a sheet of dialogue. Um, but ultimately, I feel the same as you. I prefer it. The more sort of the broader my view, the less tight I am once I'm
Yeah,
on
yeah.
screen, and that I think can only be a good thing as far as
I
I'm.
think, and when I think is, I hope you keep doing. I hope you. I see people sometimes standing, tensing themselves. Don't talk to me for a minute. No, I just got to.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what are you doing now? What are you winding up towards? Because
Mm.
I'm trying to empty out and let someone else come in. Just come in and take over. So any of that planning stuff seems odd to me. But I will say, whatever you did, this whole film, despite all the things I'm saying about craft and the volume stage and the beauty of it, the whole film is what inside your head, which you took us through that journey beautifully. The film, that's a great thing short films can do. They can give you just a snatch of what it's like to be someone, and we recognize ourselves in those moments, and you don't have to tell a full story. And I loved it for that. I feel like we've now gone on for longer than the film itself. And
Yes,
so I'm going to
true.
bring it to a close as if I'm somehow a talk show host and say that
I
I'm
mean,
really glad
you
I met
should be.
you.
That you've been
Thanks very
extraordinary.
much.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
really glad I met you. I think
Thank
it's
you
terrific.
so
Thanks
much,
for having
Lindsay.
me,
I
and
so appreciate that.
I look forward to whatever the hell you guys will do next.
Thank you.
Right
It's
back
been
at you,
such
and
a
I
pleasure
hope we
speaking
get
with you.
to do something at some point. So
Something.
nice to meet you, Jason. I really appreciate it.